This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not helping bad girls set up their websites, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio World.
All of us have struggled through the COVID-19 pandemic, and many of our communities have been particularly hard hit. Some things definitely need to change, but a few things should stay the same, like protecting your child from serious diseases you can prevent now. Preventable diseases like measles, mumps, and whooping cough. Is camp, childcare, or in-person school on your family's agenda? Give your child a healthy and safe summer and school year by making sure they're up to date on vaccinations and well child visits. You have the power to protect. Call your healthcare provider to find out what vaccinations your child is due for and make an appointment today. If you need help finding a provider, visit parenthelp123.org or call the Help Me Grow Washington hotline at 1-800-322-2588. An interpretation is available.
Hello, listener. What's important to you about what's going on in your community? Are you interested? Are you concerned? In any case, I invite you to tune into my show, Seattle Here and Now, on Rainier Avenue Radio World. Why? I will be covering a wide range of topics important to you and impacting the community. Each show will have a special guest or guests to share with you information on a variety of subjects that are happening here and now in Seattle. I promise I will work hard to make my show informative, interesting, and entertaining. Be sure to listen to Seattle Here and Now on Rainier Avenue Radio World.
Hi, it's your favorite Rainier Avenue radio host from the Clean Greens Living Live show. It's Queen Bree
and Robin T.
Our show is live every Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time with topics ranging from life from the farm, health and wellness, and race and social justice.
We feature guests each week with expertise in activism, entrepreneurship, healing, and food justice.
So come join your girls live every Thursdays at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the Clean Greens Living Live show. You can even call in and be a part of the show. See you then.
If you or a family member are 55 or over and need nursing home level care, but want to keep living where you are, check out Providence Elder Place PACE. This program offers healthcare, housing, transportation, and recreational activities. There are no co-pays or deductibles, and it's covered through Medicare and Medicaid. Providence Elder Place PACE works to keep you healthy and in your home. Call 206-320-5325 or visit providence.org Elder Place. Providence.org Elder Place.
You are listening to Rainier Avenue Radio World. Don't forget to log on www.rainieravenue.radio.world.
You're listening to Heartbeat Radio. I'm your host, Cindi Bright. Heartbeat Radio is a conversation aimed to take the pulse of corporate America. Opportunities for people of color, we're getting lost in the shuffle of change. I'm that provocateur of change. The hearts of corporate America are addressed. Access and opportunities will be accelerated for all people. Through Heartbeat Radio, you will gain a deeper understanding of what is necessary for change. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Heartbeat Radio and podcast on this cold, blistery evening, Wednesday evening. I'm in studio tonight. I'm excited because I have a good slate of guests here to talk with us, one of which is in the studio here with me. We'll get to that in just a second. Let me bring Joy in with me before I introduce the show. Joy, how are you this evening?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you. There you are. Here you're coming. Yeah. Before you were co-hosting with me, we had a show with the three of these awesome men on with me almost 2 years ago when we started talking right as COVID was hitting and started talking about issues that are going on in BIPOC communities. And the three of these men do some spectacular work. I can't wait for our audience to hear more about some of their work, but they're back. And so we get to just kind of hear what their lives have been like over the past couple of years. I've had a couple of sidebars, so I know that there's some interesting stories to share tonight. How are you this evening, Joy? You look different. Your hair is different this evening. Last time I saw you.
I took my hair down. Yeah, doing good. Down. Feeling good. Doing good. Just took a ride from Bainbridge Island, so I'm a little peaked, but I am here and excited about this conversation with these three.
Awesome.
I wasn't able to be on the last one, so I'm excited about this This time I'm part of the conversation.
Yes. So let's welcome our guests in this evening. Let's start with who's here in studio with me. We have Gabe Grant in here with me. So let's bring him in.
Yeah.
I think he's waving. We're trying to get him in. How radio turns into camera these days. So we have Gabe, we have Glenn Block, and we have Noah Prince. And I'm going to let the three of them introduce themselves to the audience because I want them to share with the audience what they want others to know about them. So first off, for the three of you, I think our technology might be a little challenge here trying to get everybody brought in, but let's see.
We're all here now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, Gabriel Grant here, and I help people maximize their contribution, their impact in the world. So I work with a lot of young social entrepreneurs, environmental entrepreneurs through Byron Fellowship. And also I work with some organizations, and then I do a lot of work with what we call impact networks, which are inter-organizational networks that are taking on challenges that bigger than any single organization can solve. So
how's that for a big description of what he does? Let's see. I can't see them on camera, so let's see if we can.
They're there.
They're there. Okay, see, there's Gabe now. Okay, let's welcome in Glenn Block next. Glenn, how are you this evening? Long time no see, friend.
Hey, Cindi. Yes, we need to get together in person again. Good to see you. Yeah, things are good. My name is Glenn Block. I am VP of Product at Uplevel. We are a product that helps engineering teams to foster a healthy culture, and that's a big problem nowadays, especially with burnout. That's a big thing that we focus on with our product, is helping team leaders and teams and executives within the organization to understand which teams are being burned out. And so it's a really great company that I joined a few months ago. Very excited to be close to working with customers on the problem. And outside of that, just somebody who cares about trying to build a more inclusive world, trying to bring more equity, and do a lot of work on myself and just everywhere that I can to try to break down barriers. Big believer in promoting anti-racism. And, now in my role within this organization, also trying to bring that within my company and foster that culture. And I think a big thing for me, as many of you all know, because you know me, I'm a talker, and a lot of this journey has been listening, learning to listen, learning to question, learning to be vulnerable. And I'm thankful along this journey that I met Cindi. So it's great to be back here.
Yeah, thanks for coming back on.
Last friend.
Yeah, I know. It's funny how the things that bring us together, isn't it? Last but not least, let's welcome in Noah Prince.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, definitely really nice to be reconnected, Cindi, with you under your star, and connected Glenn and Gabriel and fellowship with you, and nice to be introduced, Joy, and looking forward to the conversation that ensues. Yeah, I think Glenn, I really appreciate that personal bit that you shared out, in addition to kind of the professional hat you wear. And I definitely I'm feeling that tonight for some reason. But professionally, I come in on a spot probably in a similar space to Glenn and Gabriel. I'm a consultant. I'm a coach. I work with Fortune 1000 plus organizations. I work with mostly white, heterosexual, cisgendered men in leadership positions. Harness our collective power, what it looks like when we support and challenge each other, disrupt some of our status quo insider mindsets, figure out some of the vulnerability, as I believe Glenn said earlier, that allows us to go beneath privilege, and what happens when we reconnect on that level as humans, bring that back into our leadership, and look at, I would hope, evolved, or I think Glenn, or as Glenn or Gabriel just said, moving towards equitable partnerships with those that we share organizational space with. So try to come in on that piece of it. And I love that, doing my own work every day. And today, definitely, not just saying that, Cindi, you're the host, like, but straight up, I love the Ketanji Wade Jackson, Ketanji Brown Jackson energy in the air tonight. So that's a great piece of
It's
kind
the
of my
retro
energy.
magic stuff going on tonight.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yes. Well, I'm so glad to have the three of you back on because, a couple things I would say is, one, every week, Joy and I are having conversations about, issues that are impacting BIPOC people, or we're talking about, politics and things that we need to have change to help make systems better. We talk about business and things that need to change in business. And so we just kind of wanted to do a check-in because it's been 2 years since the three of you were on. And what I remember from our last conversation back then is there was a lot of, I don't want to say unknown, but we all had anxiousness at that time about what was happening, what was going on. And so I wanted to start on a personal level with the three of you to talk about what has transpired with you personally over the last couple of years since we all talked. And I really want us to just be able to be open with each other about kind of what is this, because Joy and I will share our lives too, like what it's been like over the last couple of years. Let's start with you. What has the last couple of years been like for you on this journey of going deeper? You're the company you're associated with is White Men as Allies. What has that been like? And especially in light of what we see on TV with white men's performance to the Supreme Court justice stuff, like what's happened? What's gone on in your world for the last couple of years?
Well, let's see. So on that work front, yeah, even our group, White Men as Full Diversity Partners, which has been around for 25 years, we're shifting. Our brand is evolving into Full Diversity Partners Global. The perspective is still that we're going to work to disrupt insiders, usually white men, not always. It could be other forms of cultural insider as well, but usually white men, helping to disrupt that, but at the same time, not have the practice be white male centered and not have the solution be white male centered. So there's been a lot of internal growth, adding on to our first 25 years of work, but also, it has shifted in organizations. There is more diversity. Doesn't mean it's more inclusive. We know that's a huge battle. It doesn't mean it's more equitable, but by fact, it is more diverse. So in that sense, we are growing, I think, to match that. And we are doing our own work in our own organizational structure to match that. And then intersecting with that, on my own front, I believe I had hair last time I was here. So embraced male pattern baldness, which is all joking aside, it's usually good. Once in a while, it is awkward. I definitely like this other side of how much of my masculinity is tied up in this shit or stuff. But it's crazy sometimes. And then I guess the last piece to that is my wife is a nurse practitioner and she runs a health clinic. And so she has had to go during the pandemic and show up for work every day. And my entire business disrupted. Instead of traveling all across the country, it's all here at this home every day, which means I am also the transporter of our daughter to school and all types of lessons that probably white collared men are probably learning at home right now. I'm learning a lot about some of my own patriarchy. So and the blessings to reconnect as a father. Let me say it in a positive way. Like I haven't been a present father for years. So and that's not going to change. Like I've already decided as whatever we move on, I'm not going to disrupt that pattern of staying home and being present. So
the pandemic has definitely shone a light on all of that. So you're right there, Noah. You are right there. Good for you. Good for you.
Let's hear from Gabe. Gabe, how has the last couple of years been for you during this?
Well, the anxiety is still present, Cindi. So it's a little different. We feel a little safer about the virus. We know how you get it now, but the racial anxiety is still there. The Ukraine anxiety is now there. Similarly, my wife works in healthcare. She oversees quality of care in nursing home therapy clinics, which are often the sort of highest trained medical staff on site. And so she's been pre-pandemic, she went from clinic to clinic to clinic. Pandemic, obviously you couldn't do that. So she's been outside virtually beaming in, coaching them through COVID response. And so probably similarly on the home front, I've been learning a lot about trauma and healthcare worker burnout, and how do we care for people during this crisis. And that's given me a lot of reflections on our own privilege, because we are able to beam in and stay in our box for a long time. It's also, I've gotten to notice, who doesn't have that. We lived with our in-laws my parents, for a year and a half. And so we had that safety net. We could get support with the kids, with those grandparents, and we're able to keep working. And I've noticed people who couldn't keep working because they didn't have those levels of support. And now we're sort of in this healing journey, which maybe has started, maybe hasn't started yet. I hope we're entering into this healing journey, and I don't know how long that's going to take. So it's things look different on the other side. At the same time, I have a PhD in leadership and sustainability, and who knew I'd be more and more in demand as the world got seemingly more and more crises. So paradoxically, my work has been great, and trying to hold it all.
Glenn.
This is where I need to be careful, because I could go for 20 minutes. I mean, it's been really hard. It's just been so much hitting at you at the same time. I lost an uncle, not due to COVID, but then due to COVID, because he lived in Florida and he got sick. And because of COVID, there was a lack of, other people were suffering because all the attention was going to COVID. So he died in the hospital. He did not see his family for the last 2 weeks of his life, other than on Zoom, and then he died. My dad got COVID. My stepmom got COVID. I thought I was going to lose my dad. It was really tough. I had to go down there, which you have to do. He lives in Florida. That was like the last place in the world I wanted to go to, but had to. I mean, literally like the last, like I would almost rather get poked with needles than have to get on a plane to go to Florida, but I did it. And then, my family, of course, like everybody, I have an only child, seeing her struggling. There's depression, there's lots of things, the challenge of being alone during that time. And then I think looking at, and talking about the privilege lens, just struggling too with how do I feel knowing about what's going on for Black people and people of color in this country? And of course, I need to make space for myself, and what I'm feeling is real. But then, looking at all the data that was coming out about how the medical system is stacked against Black people and how many people were dying, and lots of different folks coming out speaking about what's going on and it just was been so much. And then there's been some great highs. Like I graduated from my executive MBA program. That was a huge thing, which I was really excited about. And it's just been this trying to balance good and bad happening at the same time. And I know we always deal with that, but it felt like this has been an extraordinary time of almost like quantum physics, real highs and lows all happening in parallel. Maybe it's always been there, but it just felt a lot more prominent. And then I think the other thing is just struggling around, what do I do about it? What action can I take, and trying to push myself more and more into an uncomfortable place to be an agent of bringing change. Because if I don't do that, things won't change. I'm going to stop here because I could definitely keep going.
I think it's interesting, Joy, I'm going to let you weigh in here in a second. What's an observation I have of listening to the three of you this evening and remembering our last conversation we had. I can tell the three of you have been hit hard. And so what's interesting is the conversations I've had with you offline, and I know what all of your families are going through, and you have gained a deeper insight into the everyday lives of BIPOC people now after having gone through this kind of suffering at a very extended level. And so, Joy, do you have some comments about that?
Yeah, I was gonna definitely tune in. I was tuned into that same thing. Maybe not that you understand, but you are living through your own lived experience of the pandemic and how it's affected you and how it's affected your families, and realizing, holy crap, yes, this is what happens, not only to us, but more so to BIPOC people, to women of color, to Black women, to Black men. Yeah, this happens. We have to step up. And sometimes I was like, when Noah was talking about, I had to step up and take my daughter to school, and I had to be like on point. It's like, welcome, welcome, Noah, welcome, because we all had to do it. And I look back now and I think, how did we do that? Oh my gosh, how did we do that? But I like that there's a shared lived experience here on what the pandemic has done to all of us.
I'm older than all three of them, so mine was
too.
different than I didn't have the kid issue. I know I've had conversations. I know Gabe could talk for an hour tonight too, because I listened to what he's gone through with his kids, and things that I didn't even have to be concerned with, around 4 people trying to be on the same Wi-Fi at the same time and work in different parts of the house. And then Gabe, I think 2 of you, Gabe and Noah, you guys are self-employed, and then Glenn works for Uplevel. And it's harder when you are a self-employed person too, so that adds a whole nother dynamic on top of it. I just wanted to hear and learn more about what you learned during this pandemic about the broader world, after having, and still we're clearly not out of it. And so 2 years later, have you changed perspectives about what's going on in the world with other people that are not white men? And how are some of the folks that you do business with responding to all of this?
Cindi, I'm happy to offer a start of a response to that. It has given me a little bit of insight into the levels of safety nets and privilege. We moved in with my parents for about at least a year and a half during the pandemic, so that we could have support with our children. And they had a house with enough bedrooms to squeeze us in. And one of the organizations I work with, I noticed a number of their employees, they were Oakland based. They also moved in with their parents, wherever in the world their parents were. And that organization, fast forward a year later, was telling the success story of how all the employees took salary hits. They didn't have to lay anyone off. They felt like they all came together and they survived it together. And but one of the things that was missing was the employees of color, and it did give me the insight to ask the question: is it possible that your people of color didn't have the parents they could go live with to survive the salary cuts and the benefit cuts, and had to go get other jobs? Right. So who's not with us? Who didn't exactly. Right? Who didn't get carried in this company by their families? So just being able to notice and ask those questions has been a value, and has definitely changed the way I look at things.
I think that's a lesson learned too, to even ask the question, Gabriel. Just asking the question is important, because if I were to think back, my husband and myself, if we had our 2 boys, actually 4 kids, but 2 boys during this pandemic at a school level age. So anywhere between 1st and 12th grade would we have been able to survive? And I'm not sure. I think we would have. And I would say, however, comma, we would not have had parents to be able to help us get through that. So yeah, that's a very good dynamic and a question to ask, because I would say most folks of color do not have parents that they could go live with that have enough rooms in their home, that everybody gets their own room and their own space and their own kind of place to go, decompress. So I'm glad that, you were able to ask that question. Let's hear from.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Cindi.
I know we're having technology problems here, so I wasn't sure. Can you see me?
No.
Okay. Well, as long as you can hear me, I guess that's all that matters right now.
No.
Yeah.
He only has it on me.
Yeah, we're having technology problems here in the studio
No
this evening.
worries.
So we'll get those resolved at the half, which will be coming up here in just a
There
few
we
minutes.
go.
Yeah.
There we go. Yay.
All right.
Noah or Glenn, do you guys want to chime in here on that?
I'll go after you this time, Glenn. You go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Noah. Appreciate you. One thing that was really interesting was learning about people of color who are well, first, I still wrestle with that word and so many, let's say, non-white people, which is also problematic, right? So I've constantly tried to figure out what the best way is, and is it. Well, that's a whole different conversation, but
that's a whole different show, Glenn.
These
That's
categories,
a whole different show.
yeah, but just learning. So one of the organizations I was involved with during the pandemic is the Women's Building, which is in San Francisco, and they're an organization that is helping women of color, a lot of also Hispanic women, Latino women, who are from battered homes and things like this, and one of the things that they were working on was trying to educate around the money that California was making available for people for rent. But what got me going through the whole process just had me realize that even people, non-white people who have kind of made it, when they going through those situations of job, money getting cut, whatever, just has such a more significant effect, and many sliding into homelessness, experiencing homelessness. And that was another thing. I mean, it was also a big part of my MBA program. We did a lot of work around folks experiencing homelessness in that community, and just seeing how hit, especially non-white people were from the pandemic, in terms of the impact that it had on people moving from having homes or places to live into homelessness, and how it even has a domino effect, right? Maybe somebody was staying with someone and that person could no longer afford their rent. And so then it has this trickle down. So that was a thing that I think I already was obviously aware, but just seeing how that played out during the pandemic was very, very eye-opening, and caused me to question a lot of things.
What about in any of your workspaces? What has been the experience with your employers?
Sorry.
I'm trying to see if did you guys hear my question?
Yeah, come again with that one more time.
Yeah, I was just asking, what has been your experience with your employers in this regard? What have you seen? What changes have been made in your organizations to either support people or talk remote work?
Gotcha.
What has that been looking like? What is that experience like for you guys?
For WMFDP, definitely it's meant remote work. At our main office in Portland, we have a bit of a a hybrid, but still, even that is maybe 1 or 2 days a week people come together. And that's depending on what science is telling us around rate transmission at that point in time.
What about your clients?
That's interesting. Largely still doing virtual. There are a couple clients in some regions, down Florida, for instance, where there's clients that are definitely still doing in person, and I'm doing some of that work. But by and large, it is mostly virtual in my world.
I'm gonna take us to, we're at the half. I'm gonna take us to a station identification so that we can go to commercial and see if we can get this technology problem challenge resolved during the commercial. So let's take a 3-minute break and we'll be right back.
That up in Saks, I favor black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yeah. Yeah. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yo.
Here with the Rainier Avenue Radio Traffic Update. You can listen to us in your car 24/7 anytime by downloading the free TuneIn app. Once you do, search Rainier Avenue Radio. And remember, do not curse out your fellow drivers. This has been your Rainier Avenue Radio Traffic Update.
Dealing with COVID-19 is uncharted territory, and everyone has different challenges. People may feel anxious, down, or overwhelmed. For some, these feelings can lead to changes in sleep patterns, an increased use of alcohol or drugs, or withdrawing from the people around them. If you know someone who's having a hard time coping, you can help by reaching out to talk and listen. To learn more about how you can help someone in need, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-TALK. Brought to you by the state of Washington.
Women are not an homogenous group.
We face discrimination differently depending on factors such as ethnicity, age, socioeconomic status, and more.
Rainier Avenue Radio is proud to amplify women's voices.
They are the experts of their own lives, initiating conversations within their community about challenges they face, the solutions they're working on, and the opportunities they see.
Please join us this Sunday from 2 to 5 for Women's Voices on Air. We know our challenges. We are the experts of our lives.
We are master multitaskers, prioritizing our family, friends, and our faith above our own needs.
Our needs and voices are too often overlooked.
Please join us this Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. for Women's Voices on Air.
We tell our stories in our own way.
And what's good, Seattle? This is D-Money of Fresh Juice on Rainier Avenue Radio. Check us out every Wednesday, 9 to 11. This week on March 23rd, we got OG Mambo coming back to join us in studio with some exclusive records, and Chicago group Abstract Mindstate, who just had their album fully produced by the one and only Kanye West, will be joining us live, checking in from their show at the High Dive. So tune in this Wednesday, 9 to 11, myself, D-Money, pint-sized Patron, and ID yourself. Fresh Juice, March 23rd on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.
My name is Keith. I'm a barber from Tacoma, Washington. When the pandemic hit, it did affect me as a business owner. I had my own personal reasons why I didn't get vaccinated, but I was talking to a doctor and he was telling me more about what it could do to protect us and our family. I wanted to get back to that once was, right? I do feel safe knowing that I am vaccinated. I just hope what I'm saying is reaching into people's heads to know that this is the best decision for all of us. To learn more, please visit hereforuswa.org.
You know you can't get enough of Rainier Avenue Radio. .world.
That up in Saks, I favor black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yeah. Yeah. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yo.
Welcome back to Heartbeat Radio and Podcast. I am your host, Cindi Bright, this evening with my co-host, Joy Stanford. We have with us this evening three, I'll call them white men as allies, Gabriel Grant, Glenn Block, and Noah Prince. And we were just trying to get a pulse and a read on what has life been like for them as white men, both from the perspective of themselves and what's happened. And we were just starting to dive into what are they now observing with not only other people, but what they're in their employment situations and that sort of thing. And I wanted to head, I'm going to turn it over to Gabe here in a second. I wanted to head into going more into the impact of people around you and the work that you do to try to help lift up the communities in ways. I know each one of you individually does quite a bit of work, and you haven't spoke at all about some of the work you do to try to help with other communities. Gabe, you were about to jump in before the break.
Sure. Asking about patterns of what we're seeing in the businesses we work with. But one of the things that I noticed, Cindy, that I'm still waiting to see kind of real macro data on, but I'm seeing anecdotal stories is as the government subsidies started to come out for the pandemic. Well, let me talk to the company that I mentioned before, where they were very proud that they'd all pulled together and given up benefits and given up salary, but had made it through together, except for the people who didn't. In that meeting, that annual meeting, they were discussing how extraordinary it was. In fact, it was going to be a breakthrough year for shareholders. And so I was able to bring up the conversation. Well, have we considered, if we were held up by the families of the employees, could we consider back pay to the employees that they gave up rather than the shareholders having a breakthrough year, maybe paying the employee or maybe paying the employees that couldn't afford to be here anymore? And that's one example, but I've seen this pattern because I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners. Is like the more successful you were, the more the better you were doing. Even a lot of doctors have their own LLC or S corp set up that they work under, and so their subsidies, their benefits that were coming from the government during the pandemic were just tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's like during a crisis, it's like we grabbed the table and shook it, and all the poker chips landed in the pockets of the people that already had the most poker chips.
Exactly.
And so it's just watching that happen, and nobody's out there talking about that because nobody wants to say I got chips I shouldn't have gotten or what have you. And it wasn't that, surgeons not giving surgeries because people couldn't come into the hospitals and give surgeries, and they had, a mortgage and like they had their expenses, like it to keep their livelihood. They probably still lost a bunch of money, but nevertheless, we're giving out tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to the people with the most money already, and then thrilled about our shareholder returns on the backs of the employees and the families in the organizations. So I'm really curious to start seeing some macro data on the societal sort of distribution of wealth and what took place during the pandemic.
Here's an article and I want to hear from others on this, that question too. There's an article, I think it was in the New York Times today, I read about a record year for bonuses on Wall Street. And I almost couldn't read it because for the very thing that you're describing, because of the amount of money that was given to the people that are fighting to keep money out of regular people's pockets. I'm going to call it the affirmative action for white folks. For how they've taken and still want to have little empathy for the suffering of most people in this country, not just BIPOC people. Most people have suffered through the last couple of years.
We saw that the money wasn't getting to those folks.
So
the rental assistant that was supposed to be getting to those folks had so many hoops to jump through. It never got to the people that needed it. I still know a young lady who's still trying to get it. She finally has a job. She finally has housing. Only because of, I'm going to go back to Gabriel, her mom and her stepdad helped her secure a place. A lot of people don't have that safety net. A lot of people don't know who to go to when they're not getting that little bit of money that's been supposed to be trickled down. It didn't trickle down for a lot of folks. It didn't trickle down. So yeah, I'd love to hear what Noah and Glenn are thinking about this.
Glenn, I want to probe you deeper on.
I was just gonna, go ahead.
I think you have an interesting story about that, and you also changed employers during this cycle too, and I'd love to hear you talk about that.
So a couple of things. I think what's been really interesting for me being in the tech industry is seeing from an industry perspective, tech has catered more to the ability for people to work remotely, and that there are many others in other, there are many people, particularly I think non-white people, that are working in jobs where they don't have that, they can't do that. They are working in jobs, especially folks that have more jobs that are non-tech related, jobs that are blue collar type jobs, if you want to say, and many of them died flat out because they had to wrestle with being exposed to COVID, while those of us in tech were able to just kind of be like, wow, this is awesome. Like we can, like, it's not awesome, but it's awesome that we're safe. And I think that is something I think a lot about, in that the tech industry itself has this problem, or I would say that there's an imbalance there. That there's a lot of things that are afforded to people in technology because of that ability to work remotely. But I'll go further than that and say also, when we talk about the things that non-white people have experienced through COVID, the big tech companies, from what I see, were in a much greater position. And that's a challenge in itself. They were in a much greater position to better support their employees. And there's a lot of debate about this. But the other side to that is, to even be in those companies is an access issue. Like, to even just have a job in those companies, there's so much that is loaded in that. And I was at Microsoft for 18 months recently, before I joined Uplevel, and saw a lot of, at least outward efforts to try better to support non-white people within the organization. We can debate about how successful that was, but there's a lot of companies that just weren't in a financial position to do that. And
or they didn't know how to do that,
and didn't have the desire, right? There's organizations that didn't have the desire to do that.
Yeah.
So it's just been very interesting looking at it from the lens of technology and looking at all the inherent inequities that exist within the tech industry.
Last week I went to excuse me for interrupting. Last week I went to a
no problem.
Chamber of Commerce meeting. The Bellevue Chamber put on an event called the War for Talent, and they had 3 major employers there. And I went to go hear what was going on. I just wanted to gain perspective. And when I would say, so there are 3 main companies there. The basic message I heard out of all 3 companies is that they were all doing just fine. It sounded as if, there was nothing wrong. There was no issues. Everybody was tooting their horns. It wasn't a diverse panel. So it was 3 VP level white women HR executives all saying how wonderful everything was. So my question is it? Is that right? Is that true?
No. That is not. No, that is not
true.
In
real people world.
That is not true. And I think there's a lot of disconnect with the realities of what is going on, and there are voices that are quieted and ignored, and there's performative things going on up and down. You've seen some of that, Cindi, within organizations. I know you've seen that firsthand. So no, definitely not. That's not the case.
No, what do you think?
Do I think we're in a better place right now?
Yeah, I mean, you're in working with folks on these issues. Are companies in a better place? Are things really fine?
No, and I don't know companies. I mean, first off, so several thoughts. I mean, if I want to speak, if I'm wearing social justice activist hat, Noah, like I can go in that conversation. Or if I'm wearing like professional, Noah gets paid to do DEI work in corporate America with white people, then I'm going to wear that hat right now. And I'm not. So that's the hat I'm striving to wear in this conversation. And for that answer, I'd say I don't hear clients saying anything about feeling comfortable in this market. They got talent leaving whether it's called the Great Migration, and I know that largely led by Black women. I think there's also intersections of class privilege and other things in there. So I think all these things have nuance and patterns on them. Both these are going on. But I think companies are freaked out about the hybrid work model. I think companies are freaked out about Ukraine. I think companies are freaked out about a lot, about generational differences, political differences, CRT. I mean, I just think on and on and on and on. And it's not like I'm saying that with empathy either, because I don't know how I fully, anyway. But I'm saying that I don't hear companies saying, yeah, this is awesome. We're definitely copacetic out here just rocking it. And that's only my perspective.
And your social justice hat would say?
Is it the chickens coming home to roost? Is it that this stuff is maybe some companies were too big to be built in the first place? Is capitalism sustainable? I mean, all those types of questions are things that need to be asked as the world, as global warming accelerates, and as the social contract is, I forget the Black woman who pointed out during George Floyd's murder, but so eloquently said, is broken. So, I would wear that hat and say that for that side of it.
And our companies just checking a box because of the environment that we're currently in.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a huge uptick last year at WMFDP. It was probably our biggest year in 25 years. And we knew too, like, this is George Floyd murder money. This is blood money in a sense. And
exactly.
And so the challenge was, can we form enough patterns with enough insiders with enough privilege to ask enough disrupting questions of their peers during the times that we do have with them for it to make a different footprint with this organization, that enough real people have enough moment to catch their breath to question entire systems. And you're always wondering that shit, and you're always trying to find the data to back that up, I guess, or at least I am. But I mean, I think we saw a lot happen because we had a trifecta. The pandemic shut down capitalism. That was enough for white people to finally stop refuting at a meta level what white supremacy had told us to stuff down for so long. And then you had people personally worried about their own kind of individual or enough free time, I guess, to explore their humanity again. And we don't get that every day.
Is anybody talking about Brittany Griner? Anybody heard anything mentioned in their organizations about Brittany?
Definitely.
Well, at least she got seen. We finally seen her after several weeks. Her attorneys say that she's been in contact with them. But yeah, that's a good question. Are those cultural topics being talked about at the corporate level by these folks? Using it as an example of what could happen, what has happened.
I mean, in my activist hat, I'm a season ticket storm holder. So like, I'm spending money for Griner. I'm signing petitions and everything. Like, no, I don't know. I don't think the companies are anti-racist all of a sudden.
I mean, I haven't gotten any emails. And so, I'm being a little sarcastic here, but, when George Floyd died and the world all witnessed the murdering, and employees went into uproar. And I want to come back because I want Gabe to talk more about the trauma stuff, because this trauma stuff is real. But now we've got Brittany missing. And while she's not murdered, we certainly don't see her on TV. The media is not covering her. From my perspective, she's being treated exactly like how Black women are always treated, which is disregarded, disrespected, all of that. The trauma response to all of this, all of us, I know every day, like, I don't have to go into an employer. I don't have to report to somebody. So I have a blessing that I work for myself, because just trying to mentally cope with every single day, what we have to contend with when, I could talk about it for hours about this, but I want to hear from you guys tonight. Trauma. What's it been? What are you observing? What are you personally experiencing from a trauma perspective? What's your family experiencing? And what are other people experiencing that you're around every day?
Great question.
Gabe?
Personally, I'm more tired than I've ever been in my life. I can't seem to track the timing of when things happen during COVID. And I read that is a PTSD symptom. Yes. It's like pre-COVID, during COVID, and we'll start talking about after COVID someday. But I can't keep track of when things happen. And it's been difficult at home with living with somebody in geriatric healthcare, being a partner of somebody in geriatric healthcare. during this crisis. The trauma has become very, very front and center, that learning about how and why are we experiencing the things we're experiencing, and now starting to look out in the world at the employers that I'm working with, the companies that I'm working with, who are seeing this great migration, right? And I think we're sort of shuffling chairs around on the Titanic, or maybe hopefully a tennis court, but because we've all experienced at some level this collective traumatic event, and perhaps many of us are experiencing symptoms. And one of the things that we try to do to avoid that, I'm seeing a couple patterns. So one is, I work with a lot of purpose-led businesses. So you keep ratcheting up these crises in the world, and people are sort of energized by that. They want to care more. Is that like a healthy state? It's a healthier coping mechanism, right? And some coping mechanisms to trauma. I wouldn't call it a healthy state. And some people are trying to just switch. Like, I have friends that are like, I'm moving out of this state because I can't stand this state anymore. I'm moving out of this company. It's like they're trying to escape the circumstances where they experienced, where they're experiencing everything, all these traumatic events all at once. But I don't think they're going to find, I don't think it's going to smell different, look different, feel different in the next company. So I think there's, as a society, I'm hopeful that we learn how to have conversations about trauma like we've never learned before, and learn how to heal from trauma. And I think that's going to be required if you want to keep your people. If you want to keep your people, you better be having a group trauma healing conversation inside of your organization. Otherwise, the best thing they can do for themselves in their healing is to change all the people around them, change the walls around them, and try to get some relief that way.
It's a great statement, Gabe, about, because I have been reading about companies who have recalled people back to work, companies who have recalled 100% people back to work, and watching the fallout of that. Are companies equipped to handle trauma, and will the BIPOC people be treated as if they are not experiencing any trauma? Because that would be a pattern of behavior by managers to disregard the health and well-being of people. Other thoughts about that topic?
I don't know what to say about the trauma thing. I think trauma is everywhere. Just want to make sure I mention on the trauma topic, and I just watch people, particularly non-white people, in a constant state of trauma at where things are. And I know I'm in it, and it's like, but then I think about the fact that I have that advantage that it's going to end probably at some point, unless COVID takes me or something else takes me. And then, but it's like for people that are dealing with the constant trauma of like white supremacy and this, which must be, completely overwhelming. And then knowing that, even when it goes back, you're still left with this really horrible situation every minute, every second of every day. And so that is, I don't know what to say about it. I also feel like a lot of the trauma, there's going to be residual effects. Like, there's what we're living in now, but what is going to be the long-term effect of this? And even
we talked about it last week, Cindi and I. We talked about it last week when we were saying some folks don't want to go back. Even teachers. I mean, just to me, that's just like this. Like, teachers are going to go back to school. Some Black teachers were like, "I'm good. I could teach online. I'm good. I don't have to have those microaggressions. I don't have to answer the questions, the dumb questions." And I think Black folks are in the business world the same way. I don't have to be in those spaces, and I can be in my own space.
Can you guys hear me? Okay, I can't ever tell if my stuff is working here. my sense is that I know everybody's going to cringe when I say this, but I feel like we're just at the beginning stage of kind of a collective consciousness awareness. Like, I don't feel like we're at the end. To me, it feels like the beginning, because I think there's several things that I observe that I think there's so much disruption happening right now. And what, at least from a business perspective, is trying to happen is they're trying to force things back to quote unquote normal, where normal wasn't working for most people. And so so I think that this push and this fight, this great resignation, the way we're describing people don't want to set foot back in, I think it's the beginning, and encompassed with, we're in midterm elections, and the right is going to start trying to take over again. And so their way of doing that is to create more divide and create harm to BIPOC communities. So I'm not trying to be negative. I'm trying to be realistic. This is the beginning of a collective awakening. What will the next few years start to bear for people personally? How will business respond to this moment? Are they going to pivot? Are they going to actually change? These are just kind of the
Or
questions
are
I
they going
think.
to uphold the structural or the systemic racism that already exists in the structures of corporations?
Well, they're going back to the way it used to be. And
If
so
we're going back, that's what it is.
That's
It's
exactly.
systemic racism in your structure of your corporation. And what does that do? This doesn't do anything for me. Why would I want to be
And
there?
how are we going to handle it now that white people are suffering from it too? Like, you know what I mean? Like because the amount, the widespreadness of trauma, the widespreadness of fatigue, families, the things that have happened to all people now come into play. And so the I would say the imbalance of where, the people who are making all the money are going to want to just keep pushing the people who can't take this anymore, which is most people, right? Most people don't want to live like this. And yeah, I'm just kind of venting a little bit, but I'm just wondering what the next phase of all of this is.
Yeah,
Well,
I think it's also really important. Did you want to go?
No, go ahead.
I think it's also really important to recognize the challenges that the LGBTQ community is facing, especially people of color within the LGBT community, which creates even more trauma, more challenges, more. The other thing I want to say, and not to be over optimistic, but one positive thing I think I do see is I do see more and more people that are questioning, more white people that are questioning. And I see that as a positive sign. I mean, I think there's been a lot of books that have put out there, like Ibram Kendi, Ibram Kendi's book, Minda Hartz's book, your book, of course, Cindi. I think that there's an energy there. And I do, again, I'm not going to be like, I don't want to make it something that it's not, but there's definitely something there. There is something there that is building. That I
think there's not enough, though, Glenn.
That's
I think
a question.
There's not enough.
It's not enough.
White folks who are walking.
It's not
shoulder
enough.
to shoulder,
but
and
it's
asking
noticeably different than it was.
Yes.
I think.
Yes, absolutely. We will give props there. Absolutely. Yeah.
But definitely more work that needs to get.
Way more work.
Absolutely.
We keep at it, don't we?
Noah, were you about to say something?
Oh, I was saying, yeah, keep at it. We keep at it. I love being in community with y'all. Keeps me motivated.
We're grateful to have you guys on tonight. I know we're just about at the hour. I wanted to hear. I wanted to know, what I will comment though. It's just interesting talking with you guys tonight because your energy level, all three of your energy, is substantially lower than the first time when we had you on the show. So I can tell that you. And I don't mean that as criticism. I can tell that you've been through something. And so that's telling. And you, the three of you are out in the world trying to help create change and taking on some of these battles that, BIPOC people live with every day. And so for that fight, we are grateful for you three men who are out there helping us do this work because it's taxing. It's taxing on all of us as humans. Any final thoughts before we call the show? I humbly thank all of you for coming on. It was great to see all three of you again tonight. Any other thoughts before we go to conclusion? Joy?
I'd love to hear from Gabriel, Noah, and Glenn. Closing remarks.
Sure. And this is a question. So studying trauma to try to support my wife, it turns out all the experts agree you're supposed to stop the trauma. And then you can go into the healing. And so I guess my question is to both of you, how do you heal when the trauma doesn't stop, like when we're still in it?
I would say I'm not healed. I cope.
I think we say that a lot on the show. We're tired. We're exhausted trying to tell people how to treat us.
I just say I cope. I mean,
yes.
There are days that I don't feel like doing anything, and I don't, because I can't sustain it. It's too much sometimes. It's just too much. It's been tough the last couple of days to watch those idiots questioning her.
She's the most qualified to be up there.
But what it does is it triggers women like me, because I've sat in these interviews and have been interviewed by these gross people and have watched I've watched the system play it out so much and how they do this that I just almost can't take it anymore. So I appreciate you asking the question.
It's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you for caring about our mental health too. Look, we are at the hour, so I just wanted to thank all three of you and Joy for coming on with us again tonight. I'll check back in with you guys later this year and see how things are going. Keep up the good fight. For our audience who joined us tonight, thank you for tuning in tonight. It's an important conversation to keep in the forefront. We look forward to seeing you all next Wednesday.
Thank you, Cindi. Thank you.
I favor black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yeah. Yeah. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yo.